The drums are also used in religious ceremonies and festivals. Atsumi performs taiko at Epcot, and she has her own ensemble, Zero Taiko. She says she approaches performing with respect for the traditions of taiko, but with her own spin on entertainment. Well, Atsumi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So, for our listeners who might not be so familiar with this, what exactly is taiko?
Taiko are Japanese drums. They range in size from small to super duper huge, and generally they're all made from one tree trunk and a cow skin on each side, usually one cow per skin.
Wow.
And then the skins are tacked on by hand. So they're all handmade, one of a kind. There's no two taiko drums alike.
You need quite a lot of room if you want to play any form of percussion, right? Because a drum kit takes up a lot of room. It sounds like taiko, if you're serious about it, you need some storage space for the equipment.
Yes, a lot of storage space. They take up, and I only have basically one of each size. I have four, I guess you would say medium sized, which some people would think they were large. I have one huge one. It's about 4 feet by 4 feet in diameter. And all of that takes up half of my garage in proper cases.
Are they tuned?
They're not tuned. They do have taiko drums that are rope tension style that you can sort of tune, but basically you're at the mercy of the weather that day and how humid or dry, and that will affect the way the drums sound.
So where do you perform?
I perform currently at Epcot with Matsuriza at the Japan Pavilion. I also perform at the Animal Kingdom in Pandora, and I also have my own music and my own ensembles as well.
Are you typically performing outside?
Yes.
Right, so the weather does, as you say, play a pretty big part in the sound and everything.
Yes, definitely, especially when it's super hot and humid, which it is pretty much every day here in Orlando. Even the big drum at Epcot, which it's so big I can't even tell you the dimensions, but it's probably 6 feet long, 4 feet in diameter. It could be bigger than that even. Even that, which you would think would produce this huge sound, sometimes takes everything you have and then some to get a good sound out of it, because it's so humid, so the head is really damp and it's hard to push that sound through. And
taiko, it's a really physical workout, right? You have to, as you say, throw everything you've got into it.
Yes, it is full body. I like to think of it as grace with power, because the movements of taiko are just as important as the rhythms you're playing and as the beats that you hit. The arm movements and your stance, they're deliberate. It's not something you just go and do. Everything is calculated, and every angle is calculated, whether it's a straight line or a 90-degree angle. Everything is calculated. It's like an art form, really.
The approach to practicing and performing, is it almost like the way you might approach studying a martial art?
I think of it that way. I think of it as there's like an unspoken code of ethics in taiko, because it's not traditionally a martial art, but I feel like there's the same kind of elements where you have the respect for your sensei, you have the respect for your elders that have been there longer than you have the respect for your drums and your equipment and your space. And typically the rehearsal space is called a dojo, and you bow before you go in, and you greet everyone as you go in and you greet everyone as you leave. And I appreciate that, because I feel like taiko is such a voice that people don't consciously realize. The vibrations of taiko are so big that you feel the beats before you hear them. And so to me, that's an unspoken language that you feel, and it's very powerful. So that is important to me when I play taiko. So learning taiko is to be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an instrument, in my opinion.
How did you get into it?
I was very lucky to be recruited by the leaders of the group that are now at Epcot. And I've known them since I was like 3 years old through the Japanese community. And I had been playing music since the womb, I like to say. And I come from a family of entertainers of all kinds. And so they felt that I would be a good candidate to pick it up rather quickly, which is what they needed at the time, and start performing. So they actually had asked my mom if they could ask me, and she was like, sure, I'll see if she wants to do it. And
because you were a kid at this age.
Yes, I was pretty young.
Mm-hmm.
And my first answer was, no way. Are you kidding me? I can't do that. Because I was not an athletic child whatsoever. I was the last one picked in all the sports, like hated dodgeball, hated PE, but loved music. So my mom was never forceful about anything, and just said, well, why don't you sleep on it and let me know tomorrow?
Mm-hmm.
And so the next morning I was like, all right, fine, I'll try it, but no promises. No promises. I'm only going to go to one rehearsal and no promises. And when I went, it was so different because all I had ever known percussion-wise is the drum set, because my father and my brother were kit players.
Mm-hmm.
So that was blaring in the house all the time. And my brother's 8 years older, so I knew every song on the radio by the drum track, because every day he'd come home from school, he'd have his headphones on and be playing the drum set to his favorite songs, and it was just so annoying. And I just wanted to play the piano, but I couldn't because all I could hear were his drums. And so when I went to that first rehearsal, I realized how different taiko was. And it was so expressive, but challenging, but graceful and powerful, and just so different. And it really opened up my mind.
So was that the first time you heard taiko?
No, I grew up going to all the festivals and stuff. So I'd actually seen them, the husband and wife team, performing. And I was always enamored by her because she's this tiny woman with so much power. And stereotypically you think, drums and men and guys and big guys. And I was just always enamored by her grace and power. So I knew what it was. I just never thought that I could do it. And I think what sealed the deal is the second rehearsal I went to, I brought my brother, and we thought, oh, he's going to pick this up in 5 minutes. But actually, he gave up halfway through because it was too hard. I said, oh yeah, I got something now. I can do this. I wanted to ask, finally something I can outdo him on. And he always said, the drum set looks hard, but it's pretty easy. But taiko looks easy, but it's really hard. I was a teenager, so I don't know that I really had that deep mentality about it. But looking back, I knew it was inside of me. And I always had the respect for what those drums were and what they were originally intended for, which, hundreds of years ago, they were used in the battlefields. They were used in shrines and temples for joyous occasions and sad occasions when people pass away. They're used in farmers would use them to help grow crops, and they were used to communicate with your ancestors.
More than just entertainment going on here.
Yeah, it's very ritualistic.
Is there much of a following for it here? You're performing at Epcot, so you have an audience that is coming from all over the world, right? So
right.
Chances are somebody in the audience knows taiko and has some kind of inkling of what it is. But what about here in Florida?
I think here in Florida, because of Disney World, there's a lot of people that are annual pass holders that know of taiko because of Epcot. So if I meet someone at another event that's not Epcot related, and I say I play taiko, and they're like, oh, like those people at Epcot. So in that sense, I feel like it's pretty known in Orlando, but in general, I think it has the popularity more among fans of anime and things like that. But as far as, and other drummers that are into other kinds of percussion and things like that. But I don't know that there's a huge, following per se.
But you're helping expose people to something new.
Yeah, that's why I started composing my own music. I felt like it would be another outlet to have taiko as an instrument within a song that isn't just taiko drums. And then you kind of broaden your range and broaden the sounds to people listening. And so if they hear this music and they're like, oh, what kind of drums are in that song? Oh, these are taiko drums. It's something different, a different way to listen to them.
And you've got a couple of albums under your belt. You want to tell us a little bit about those albums?
Yeah, I have one with my band, Zero Taiko. This is more of a collaborative ensemble, and a lot of the music was collaboratively written and arranged. And this particular album was composed by Michael Crane, who also did my solo album. And I think the trick for a producer for me is to understand my story. I like to call my songs my stories because I feel like music is the universal language, and you can feel something through music without necessarily listening to words. And he got it so impeccably. And so the Zero Taiko album is more this bombastic, big, in-your-face kind of music. Some people say it's Cirque-ish type music. And I have a solo EP that all the songs on that one I composed myself. And these are more subtle, I guess. Not as big and bombastic as Zero Taiko. But these were all my own compositions and my own personal stories. So there's actually one on there called Sway, which was inspired by the tsunami and earthquake in Japan.
Well, Atsumi, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story about taiko.
Thank you so much.
Support for Intersection comes from Advent Health and from our listeners. Intersection's producer is Brendan Byrne, technical direction from Juan Gualda, production assistance for today's show from Danielle Pryor. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And we're on the NPR One app. I'm Matthew Petty. Thanks for listening.